Hello, I'm Mary Roediger, owner of So True Designs and past national coordinator of the Make It With Wool contest. I'm here today to show you a nice pincushion, a wool applique project. Last season I showed you a lot of wool fabrics, hopefully to encourage you to start sewing with wool. So today, for your project, you're going to want to start out by finding the wool fabrics that you want to use in the color palette of your choosing. You're going to need a small piece of fusible paper-backed web, a little bit of wool batting or roving to fill your pincushion with, some variety of threads, and we'll talk about that in a moment. You'll need some sharp needles. I prefer a crewel or embroidery needle. They have a larger eye that will accommodate the thread that you're using. And then there's lots of other little tools, needle threaders that can help you in your process as you go along, and some good pairs of very sharp scissors that will help you in making your cuts in your wool fabrics. The pattern that we have for you on the web is already reversed for you, and it's ready for you to put your paperback webbing on and to trace your pattern. I like to use a fine point permanent marking pen to do that, and the ones that I've already started, I've grouped by the colors that they will be, the wool that they will be cut out of. And in the case of this pattern piece, the three pointed ones are very similar. So I have labeled them to help me remember where they belong on the pattern. And that, then these will get cut out. And as you cut them out, you can leave these grouped by the color of wool that you're going to be using. I do like to leave a bit of an edge around these, so that as you fuse them, you have a complete fuse on your entire piece. So these are already fused. And remember that wool does love steam, so it responds well to being steamed. And then these pieces will get trimmed totally. You have to remember how you've cut out, how you've made your pattern pieces. If you've traced just outside the lines on the pattern, then you're going to want to cut away your tracing line. If you've traced directly on, then try and cut right on your line to try to keep those pieces as close to what the pattern was drafted to be. And once all of that is cut out and you are ready to apply your pieces to your backing, I've already started this, and you're going to peel away your backing pieces. I'm using a seam gauge set to 3/8 of an inch to help me with that seam allowance. When I end up stitching my pin cushion, I won't catch these design elements into the edge. This pattern was based on some stained glass windows. I have an affinity for those, and hopefully you will enjoy putting this pattern together. So there it is, all ready to be appliqued and worked on. At this point, your project's very portable. Makes a great thing to take if you have places that you need to sit and wait. So the thread that I'm using is a stranded cotton floss that I've stripped down to 3 strands. But like I said, there's a lot of variations out there. There are wool threads, there's regular sewing threads, there's heavier cotton pearl threads, there's even decorative threads that will work for your applique. Just make sure that the needle that you've selected has a sharp point and an eye that will accommodate those threads that you're working with. So I'm going to show you how I begin on this round piece. I feel like the pieces with corners are a little easier. I like to put a pin in for this very first stitch and catch my thread under that pin. That will hold enough so that as I work around, I can come back and I can put my needle right in where that pin is holding, and it will not be very evident where you began or ended. Some people like to begin their embroidery with a knot, but you can also begin with just a few small stitches to hold your thread in place. Since this piece is going to be all closed up, no one will see your back of your work. And you could manipulate these stitches. And as long as your tension isn't too snug on these, you can help steaming that thread into place as you finish. All right, so now I'm back around, and if I just insert my needle right where that pin is holding that thread and draw it down through, it helps to hide where I've begun and ended. And then on the back of your work, maybe a couple of stitches and a knot. And really in very short time, you can complete a design like this. My piece fell off. So this is a piece already completed with hand stitches, and you can see the definition of, I've used wool thread on this, how it shows up against, and this sample using very similar thread colors, this is a wool thread and this is just regular sewing thread, all-purpose sewing thread. And let's go to the machine and let me show you how that's done with the applique stitch. So I've set up the machine for the applique stitch, and you can very easily work this around each of your shapes to create that look of a hand blanket stitch. Working with wool is very therapeutic. This stitch is doing one forward and then two to make your blanket stitch. So you just watch where the needle is in relation to your shape to know when to stop and to be able to turn. All right, let's take a look at this. So by using a contrast thread, that helps you to see how this stitch is worked out. Your next step, once you have all of your applique work done, is to take a piece the exact same size, lay it on, and stitch around the 3 sides. I like to stitch into the corners a little bit, leaving an opening to turn to make your pincushion. And this one's already been pressed and is all ready to flip out. Point turners can help you get your corners nice and sharp the way you like. And then I like to add, it's listed on your pattern on the website as an optional thing, but I do like to use a piece of template plastic. It's cut maybe about 1 inch smaller than the design. I've rounded off the edges so that it won't poke through, and use that underneath all of your stuffing to make a nice edge to prevent needles and pins from popping through and stabbing you. So here's your project. I hope that you give it a try and enjoy working with wool.